Welcome to the show, Vivian.
Hi, JD. It's good to see you.
You too. Welcome to the new show because you've already been on the old show. Well, not the old
Yes,
show, the other show, because
thank you
that
for
is,
having me back.
of course. Usually I ask what your sober date is, but we've already talked about that. So tell me where you're from.
I am from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was born in Tulsa. I was raised in Muskogee and Owasso. And then we moved up to Idaho when I was a young kid to help my grandfather on the farm out in a little tiny town called Parma. So
How long did you stick around Oklahoma for?
we were there for 4 years of my childhood. I would go back as often as I could. I haven't been back for a few years though, but most of my family is down south.
Okay, and you're still around Idaho?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I live in Boise now.
Oh, okay. Boise's a cool city.
It's the city of trees.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So you grew up in a small town in Idaho then?
I did. Yeah.
Brothers, sisters?
I have an older sister. We don't talk. I really haven't spoken to her in over a decade. There's some bad blood there and a lot of animosity, so it's just better to cut ties instead of just dwelling on something you can't change.
Yeah. And that's it for siblings, just you and your sister.
That is correct. Yeah, her and I are 22 months apart. She's older than me.
Did she come with you to Idaho?
She did. Yeah. Yeah, we were all here. I think she left about 4 years ago, I want to say, and moved to South Dakota with her husband, who's a doctor, and he actually works at a university there teaching.
Oh, okay, I got you. And you moved as a whole family, or are your parents still together?
No, so my mom left my birth father back in Oklahoma, and we moved up here. And she married this man named Mark, who he was ex-military. I think he was about 15 or 20 years younger than her. Quite an age difference, but age is but a number, you know.
That's weird because of the age difference being the man is younger.
Right. Yeah. My mom has always had younger men.
I'm younger than my wife by 3 years, and I'm always busting her about it. Like, a real funny story is the day she met my grandmothers. It was at my parents' house, and we're sitting around the table, a square rectangle table, and my wife's next to me right here, talking to my dad over at the end, and I'm talking to both grandmothers on the other side, and I was talking about how she's 3 years older, and my wife turned to me and she's like, "What did you say?" And then I turned to her, I was like, "They said we're talking about how old you are."
She's the cougar.
Yeah, we all started laughing, and my grandmothers were like, "Oh my god, he's in trouble for saying," and my wife was just cracking up laughing. But that's one of my favorite stories of when we were early on. We've been together 5 years now. Well, 5 years in April. So,
Awesome.
no, holy shit, 6 years in April. We've been married 4 years this week. On Wednesday, it'll
Ooh,
be 4 years.
happy
So
anniversary.
thank you. We got
You're
married in
welcome.
our living room
That's
during
awesome.
during COVID. So
Okay.
it was a nice living room wedding with just my friend and I and her, and that was it.
Keeping
And
it small.
three of us and two of us were getting married. The other one was officiating.
That's awesome.
That's my wife had already been married before and did the whole show, the whole big, all the families there, and I didn't need it, and I didn't
Yeah.
care about it. I don't need
Yeah, I
that.
think weddings are overrated.
Yeah, I'm over it. I didn't need it. So you grew up in Idaho. What was that like, culture wise? Is that like a culture shock at all?
So the town that we moved to here was a lot like Oklahoma, but there was is a rural like farm town, so you didn't have a lot of people that were like side by side neighbor wise. It was miles before the next house because everybody out there is farming, and that's how it is in Oklahoma. It's like 3 miles to your neighbor. But where I grew up, there's a lot of towns and cities there. But where I grew up, it's spread out, and you leave your front door unlocked, and it was quite a shock when we moved from Parma into town into Boise, how close knit everybody was, like how close the houses were, and started locking our doors at night, and it was just different, the trust of like the small town, and then the neighbors, was out the window because people didn't really talk to each other neighbor wise when we moved into the city, and it was quite a culture shock for my sister and I.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's a much different kind of environment. And I remember when we went from New Jersey, everybody knew everybody. It was a 1 square mile town, houses next to each other, and all that kind of
Yeah.
shit. And we moved to Massachusetts, and it was like more spread out. We all had like an acre of land or 2 acres of land, so everybody wasn't on top of you, and you
Right.
you didn't know it was a 38 square mile city or town. I should call it, it was a town,
Yeah.
and famous for their cranberry bogs. So
Ooh.
yeah, and it was just culture shock because I went from being able to drive to any of my friends' houses in 2 minutes, as opposed to now I'm in this huge town where I don't know anybody and I can't meet
Yeah.
people unless I'm at work.
Yes.
Um, any kind of trauma growing up that young?
So the trauma didn't really start until my mom married Mark, and he was, ex-military, and growing up throughout our life, he had a job as a paramedic and a correctionals officer and a police officer. She was married to him for 10 years, and during that time, like, I I thought that abuse was normal. I didn't know that, you know, picking your own switch. And so he would do this thing called tearing your ass off. And my sister and I would have to pull down our pants and our underwear and bend over his knee, and he would put on this leather glove that didn't have like fingers, like the tips were cut off of them, and we would have to bend over his lap, and he would put this glove on and spank us as hard as he could. And like if we cried, we would get hit even harder. And it was, he would always count out how many he would do. It was usually 10, but he would try to make us cry. It was like a sadistic thing. And so,
How old were you?
it started at 4.
Damn.
Yeah, it started at 4 that I can remember. It may have been younger than that, but um and that was like, abuse was normal. There was I lied about something at one point, and he took everything out of my room. I had hardwood floors. He took everything out of my room and locked me in there for a week, with a coffee can to go to the bathroom in, a blanket, and a pillow. And I was not allowed to leave my room. I got one meal a day, and my sister would bring it to me. And I had this closet that had like a shelf lower on it for that had drawers too. And so we would sit in my closet while I would eat, and she would bring me my food. And the only time I was allowed to leave my room would be to empty my can that I went to the bathroom in. And to me that was normal. That was like a normal punishment. I guess he was kind of setting me up for preparing me for jail and prison, I guess, in a sense. But he did that a couple times. One time I had to write while I was locked in my room, I am responsible for my own actions, 1,000 times. And I spelled responsible wrong on every single line, so I had to redo the whole thing. um it was just,
Where was your
it was
mom in all this kind of, the spankings, and was she also being abused by him?
she wasn't abused by him. I don't know if there was like emotional abuse that I wasn't aware of because we were so young that I don't either remember or don't know of. She didn't ever talk about that. There was no physical abuse towards her. It was only towards my sister and I feel like I was the brunt of it. Like I got the most of it, and I don't know why that is. You know, the abuser usually picks somebody to single out a lot of times. Um, the My mom thought that the form of punishment that he was doing was acceptable for a consequence for my behavior, not realizing that it was traumatic. It was not normal, especially like the spankings that, pulling down your pants and underwear and having to bend over somebody's lap and getting hit until you're bleeding or your butt is so sore you can't sit down. And he knew that it hurt because he put that stupid leather glove on to like protect his hand, and he had won that in some sort of like tough man contest that he used to fight in back in Oklahoma. um there was my there was abuse that my mother wasn't aware of. Come to find out later when I started talking to her about all this stuff after they got divorced and separated and everything. And I would bring up things, and she literally would have no idea about all the stuff that was going on. But he would also tell us, like, if you tell your mother, I will kill you, your sister, and your mom. And I believed him, he always had a gun on him. He was always like, hammered down on everything that he said. He was a man of his word when it came to especially abuse. There was one point where my mother was going to the Oregon coast on a church retreat with some friends, and my sister and I begged her to let us go. And it wasn't like to go on vacation; it was to
It
not
was
stay home alone.
yeah.
And because that's when the abuse was always so much worse, was when she wasn't around. Um, And so she didn't let us go, obviously. That was her, women's retreat. It was her vacation. And I was a pack rat as a kid. Now I'm an OCD clean freak, but as a child, like I collected anything and everything, and my room was always a disaster. Like that was my form of control because I didn't have any control over anything else in my life.
Yeah.
And so I collected everything like Barbies, Indian beads, rocks were a huge one. I still collect rocks and dirt. Like, that was a big thing for me. But he had this like kitchen timer that he sat out in front of my door, and he set it to 10 minutes, and he says, you have this amount of time to clean your room, and then if it's not clean to my standards, I'm going to come in and tear your ass off. And God, did it took me like 8 hours to clean my room to his standards. He would go through my carpet fibers and find Indian beads that I used to like make necklaces and jewelry with, and pick them out one at a time. And for every single thing that he would find would be a spanking, dude. I was so sore. I was just beaten and bloody. It was awful. And
And he was a corrections officer.
yeah, he was a CO and a cop. Like, I don't think he was a cop at that time. I still think he was a CO. He graduated from being a correctionals officer to becoming a police officer. I don't think he was one at that point.
He
But
was treating you like prisoners.
yeah, yeah, he did. Before he was a CO, he was a paramedic. I don't know if that had something to do with whatever he did in the military. I really don't know what his role was in the military. I think he was Navy, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, sorry.
How old are you now?
Bonnie, hey, what did you say? I'm sorry.
How old are you now?
I'm 40.
So this was like 25 years ago.
Yeah, 28 years ago was the last time that he ever did anything, was when I was 12.
And this was the late
Um,
90s then.
yes,
Mid
yeah,
mid to late 90s.
yeah.
So
Uh,
he didn't really fight in a war then.
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know much about his military background. I do know that like on his shoulder though, he had like purple scars on his shoulder, and he said that it was from shrapnel, but I don't remember what kind of shrapnel it was, like how he got it from like a IUD or something, but he had like purple scars of stuff that's still in his shoulder from some sort of shrapnel. I
I
do
guess
remember that.
well no, because yeah, that let's see, the Gulf War was in the early 90s and late 80s, but by then he was already married to your mom.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely didn't go to war. He wasn't in the military, but when they got together.
Okay, yeah, so he didn't, and he was too young to go to Vietnam.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what that was. I don't know if that was from his military or if like it was something that he endured as just a child and stuff. Apparently, he had a pretty
Made up a
rough
story
background.
about it. Yeah. So this, why did it end when you were 12 if he didn't leave until you were 14?
No, he so the he had hired. Hang on, let me. So I ended up telling my mom because the sexual abuse started when I was 12, and
He
that's
sexually abused you.
yeah, yeah. It started. We were laying on the couch like watching cartoons together, and he had reached over and started like touching my chest, and it like immediately made me uncomfortable. I was 11 or 12 at that time, and so I got up and he pretended to be asleep, and so I got up and went to my room to go take my nap. um and then later on, it the night that I told my mother, he he was so OCD about how I kept my room. I remember it so clearly because as kids, like if we didn't go in and take naps when we were supposed to, we would get our ass kicked basically. And he would always come in to check to see if we were asleep. So we got really good at like faking asleep. And I always slept in like these big t-shirt nightgowns as a kid. And I always kept my bedroom door open because I was scared of the dark. And he came in my room wearing this long robe that he always had. It was navy blue and white, striped. And he came in my room, and I was a stomach sleeper. Um, and he pulled my covers down, and he turned me over and pulled up my nightgown and started like touching me with his mouth and everything. And after when that was all said and done, like he got up and he left. And before, like I had my eyes closed pretending I was asleep, but I could see him like through my eyelashes in the bottom of my eyes because my head was back, like watching him. And he stopped at my doorway and like looked at my dirty clothes that I had on the floor that I hadn't like put in my hamper. And then he looks back at me and then he walks out of my room and shuts my door. And I remember like wiping myself off with my nightgown and just being like I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. I was so disgusted and uncomfortable. Like it's just like a not natural feeling. Um, the physical abuse became like a normalcy in my life. Like that was something it just happened. But
Yeah.
this was like a whole new level of abuse, and I was just so uncomfortable. And at that time it was summer, because my sister and I were enrolled in summer classes at BSU for swim team. I was in gymnastics and weightlifting, and we would always ride our bikes down to BSU. And I told my sister, like, please have mom take you today. I don't want to go. Like, and will you tell her to come in and talk to me after she drops you off? And so I had told my sister what had happened, and she goes, "Do you want me to tell mom?" And I said, "No, let me tell her, but please tell her to like come in and talk to me after she drops you off at school." And so my mom came in and talked to me. She sat on the corner of my bed, and I was hysterical, dude, just trying to tell her. Like, I felt bad because I knew that it would hurt my mom, and that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to hurt her, but at the same time, like I was just so uncomfortable with being around him alone that I just knew that she had to know. Like it's just some sort of instinct as a child. Like you're so torn. Like because my mom was never really a part of the abuse. She didn't know like the ins and outs of everything that had happened. And now there was this. And I was like, I have to tell somebody. So I told my mom, and she went in and woke Mark up and told him to get out of the house. Like, you're done, get out, pack your shit. And so he left. But she made us all go to like family counseling at a church with a pastor, and I had to sit there and talk to him about what had happened. And Mark's in complete denial, saying that I'm crazy, that never happened, and all that stuff, totally gaslighting the whole situation. And as a child, you're second guessing yourself, like, did that actually happen? Did I
Yeah.
dream it? Like, maybe he's right. Cause I was, you respect your authorities, especially being from the South. It's yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. And, you don't question when they tell you something. And so when he's telling me that I'm lying and that I'm crazy and that never happened, like, you start really second guessing yourself. But I was like, no, that it did. Like, I remember wiping you off of me. And so there was an open investigation that happened. I had to go to St. Luke's. They have this, uh, I guess it's a program for children that are abused, and it's called CARES. It's an acronym for something. I don't know what it stands for, but I had to go into this room by myself, and it's like a two-way mirror. And I could see this little red dot from a camera on the other side. And it was around the time that True Lies had come out. So I knew what a two-way mirror was with like that little red dot
Yeah.
camera from watching that movie. And so I knew that I was being recorded. And there's somebody talking to me through like a speaker system in the room, but there's nobody in the room with me. And I'm on this like staircase that was carpeted with a whole bunch of stuffed animals around me, and they're asking me questions about what had happened that night. And I'm going through it, and this is video that they end up using in court against him, because the detective that was working my case ended up like being buddy buddy with Mark, because even though he was a police officer and stuff, there's just some things you don't do, and like taking advantage of a child is one of them. And so the detective ended up getting Mark confessing to the whole thing. And it went to trial. And I had to go and testify against him in front of a grand jury, and point him out uh, in court. There's somebody asking me, do you see this man in the room? And I had to point at him. And they asked me certain questions, but not a lot, like the people from the CARES like program did. And I guess the tape that they had recorded while I was in there was used as evidence. And he was prosecuted. He ended up getting 1 year in prison and 10 years probation. And I think he got off easy because of the fact that he was a police officer. Um, but still, like, that's, I endured like 10 years of abuse from this man, and he gets 1 year, and it was kind of like a shot to your ego. Like, it almost makes you feel like I shouldn't have even said anything, because he's not really getting his comeuppance. Um, but
How
it's,
how traumatizing was being in front of a grand jury and reliving that at 12 years old?
I, I only remember bits and pieces of it, honestly. I don't know if I've like shut
Open
it
that.
out.
Yeah.
I remember pointing him out. I remember looking at the jury, but like the my lawyer was the one that just said, "Focus on me. Don't look at anybody else in the room." I don't remember like any questions that they asked me. It was such a big room. It felt like it was enormous, like a coliseum. And all eyes were on me. It was really embarrassing. One of the hardest times in my life. I had to tell to strangers, people I don't know, like, and that to me was incredibly embarrassing. Like, it's one of the hardest things you ever have to talk about as a child, and you have to do it to all these strangers in front of the man that did it to you. It was awful.
Yeah, I
um
mean, I can't obviously imagine. A lot of people don't even like actually say anything to their accuser about shit. You know
right.
what I mean? They don't even like tell their mom about what happened or tell the police what happened, and
Yeah.
because they want to shut that out. But you were brave enough so that wouldn't happen again, because you were that traumatized to be like, no, I don't want this to happen again because of what it made me feel like in that moment.
Oh yeah. Oh
you
yeah.
know so you were a lot braver than a lot of people at that age
Yeah.
to be up on a stand and be like, "That's Mark. He did it to me. This is what he did."
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Thank you for
most
that.
people, yeah,
I uh the detective, I guess, because he ended up going to the prison that he used to work at, and he was a child molester, he ended up getting beaten and raped while he was in there. And they ended up putting him in solitary for the entire time that he was in there. And when the detective that worked the case called me in and told me about that, I asked him, I was like, can I write those guys a thank you letter for doing that? Because he kind of got to feel a little bit of what he did to me over a
oh, he
decade of
felt
my
something,
life.
that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was like, "No, sweetheart, you can't do that. But here's a teddy bear, And he gave me this little brown bear that I named Toby, that my son still has, actually.
That's
Um,
hilarious.
it, and then at some point, he was
Bake
in
them a
there.
cake.
Yeah, I really wanted to. Like, at this point, who was it? I want to know so I could say thank you. Um, at some point, he had hired somebody. This was like throughout, because it was a while to get it to go to court and testify against him and all that stuff. And then when he finally got convicted and put into prison and not just jail, at some point he had hired somebody to kill me, as retaliation, I guess. I don't know why he did it, but my mom's sister and I were at the Hostess bread store, and she had a Mercury Sable hatchback that had the seats that like face backwards. Those are super cool to sit in and like wave to people that were facing you. But we were getting Twinkies and bread and stuff at the Hostess bread store, and like there was a shot that had rang out, but it didn't really register until the glass like by my head broke in the back of my mother's car. And if I hadn't like bent down to put the groceries in, like I would have been killed. Like he hired somebody to shoot me. And so we had to file a police report against that, and they ended up, I don't know what came from that, honestly. I don't know. It's My mom said at some point it was some guy that he was either incarcerated with or that he had known from the prison. So I don't know if that's like while he was a CO or while he was in lockup that he had hired. But so I was like 13 or 14 at that time when that had happened. It's just, you don't, it's not something that you ever expect is to be shot at.
Yeah.
Um,
When did your
but my,
addiction start? How old were you?
so the first time I drank, I was in ninth grade. But that was like the last time I drank until I was 22. I was in ROTC getting ready to go do some sort of training out at Gowan Field riding in tanks. And the night before, I had stolen one of my mother's Arbor Mist wine bottles and got hammered drunk because it tasted really good. It was like a lifesaver in a
Yeah.
bottle. But I didn't realize that chugging that, the effects that it would have. I was sicker than shit riding in a tank. The next day at Gowan Field, oh my God, I was so sick. And so that kind of put me off of ever wanting to do that. At 22 is when I actually started drinking full on. It was after I quit breastfeeding my daughter, or my youngest, and I was a single, or not, I'm sorry, I was a stay-at-home mom of four kids at that time. It was a yours, mine, and ours with my husband. Um, I had four kids at 21, basically. I had my second child. I had my first one at 19, and then he had two kids. So he had his two, we had one, and then I had mine. And I was out in Parma again. He had a house out there, and I moved in with him. We got married and had our youngest child. And
So
I got bored.
we skipped over all your teen years. What were
Yeah.
your teens like once you were rid of that abuse?
I focused a lot on athletics. I was super athletic. I did a lot of soccer, softball. I did karate. Track was a big one. Basketball. Uh, we did a powder puff football league in high school.
Yeah,
I just I focused on that was like that was my addiction kind of starting up. I focused a lot on um just being the best I could be in everything I could be.
do you think you
And
did karate as self-defense because you wanted to make sure it didn't happen to you again?
no, I actually took karate to be able to keep my sister off of me. My sister bullied the shit out of me as a kid. She was always bigger than me. And that was her way of like I guess getting rid of her anger was to hurt me. And because she was so much bigger, I really couldn't defend myself. And so I got to a green belt white stripe in Taekwondo, and she came after me one day, and I was finally able to defend myself, and I broke I broke all 10 of her fingers. She never really picked on me after that. It was, a one and done kind of thing.
I
But
wouldn't either.
yeah, my sister. But my teen years were actually really good. I had a great group of girlfriends that I'm still friends with to this day. One of them passed away, unfortunately, when I was in prison in 2018. Um, but I'm still friends with the girls that I was in junior high and high school with. And we still are close to this day. It's really cool to be able to have that circle of friends. Like I never really got in trouble. I was never defiant of my mother. My sister and her kind of got into it one time. The only time I ever saw my mom hit anybody, it was my sister. She slapped her. And I'm just standing in the background like, what? Because my mom was never the enforcer, And so
Yeah,
when my mom had it, like she just gave her a good old slap to the face and kicked her out of the house. But it was warranted for sure. I mean, my sister was pushing my mom and just being abusive and aggressive towards her, and my mom just hauled off and knocked the shit out of her. That was that.
yeah.
So,
So now, what caused you to start drinking a lot when you were 22?
I was a Stepford wife out in Parma. I was meant to be seen and not heard, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, and my house was immaculate. I was taking care of 4 kids, and I was bored. I was bored as hell, stuck out in a tiny town. I wasn't allowed to like text or talk to anybody. Like MySpace and Facebook weren't a thing then. So, besides having a perfect yard and a perfect house, I had nothing to do. So in order to like fill the time, I went down with like money that I had had from a kid, like $2 bills, 50-cent pieces, so that it wasn't coming out of our joint bank account. And I would go down to the liquor store and start buying like the Idaho potato vodka, just the bottom shelf stuff. And I would hide it in the dirty clothes hamper because he never did laundry and I knew he wouldn't find it. And we weren't really ever intimate, so he didn't smell it on me. Eventually, it got to the point where I was drinking enough where it was obvious, and he called me out on it. And we went to marriage counseling, but this was like 6 months after I started drinking daily. Um, and it had gotten to the point where I was on Weight Watchers and I had a point system. And I knew that one shot of vodka was 1 point because it was 100 calories. And so I would eat like a bag of popcorn to fill my stomach up enough to where it thinks that it had eaten. And then I would go purge so I could drink more and still be within my Weight Watchers points value. And so I was just like, I was bulimic and I was a drunk. And I was sick.
I was
Like,
gonna say you were on Weight Watchers.
yeah,
Was that a you thing? Like taking control was one of those things that like you weren't in control of much, and you can control your weight by doing that. Because I don't Weight Watchers. I mean, you were smaller, right? Stature wise, because you
yeah,
played all those sports and everything like that. I feel like you would bounce back from your pregnancies.
I did. But with the marriage that I was in, that whole Stepford wife persona that I had to put on, he told me that he would buy me new clothes that if I got down to a size 8. Well, I was a size 10 at the time, but I'm curvy. I've always had like hips and a chest, but I'm not obese. I'm more muscular. But in order to get down to a size 8, I had to like watch what I was watch what I was eating, and so my caloric intake for the day should only be 1,000 calories. And if I got down to like, it was like 133 pounds, I was at a size 8, and which is actually, um, according to the scale, that's the heaviest I should be for my height. I'm 5'2", and 103 to 133 pounds is like goal weight for your height at that point. And so I got down to like the heaviest I should be for my height range, and I got down to a size 8. And he bought me some new clothes from Old Navy and stuff. It was just like a goal that I had set, kind of under his thumb, if that makes sense. Like, you get this if you do this for me.
Yeah. What do you have on your hand?
Oh, it's my trampoline man. He jumps on his trampoline.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
It's
I've seen the person that got I saw it like on Facebook. I see a lot of barbershop videos on Facebook, barber reels, and doing fades and shit because I'm into fades.
yes.
And so I see a lot of those videos, but I also see a lot of tattoos because I'm kind of covered myself. And the one tattoo was a blowfish on somebody's knee. And when you extend the knee, it gets bigger, but when you bring the knee in, it gets smaller, and the mouth goes open as you extend your knee. And I was like, that is fucking awesome. Like that is one of
What
the
a
cool.
cool idea.
Yeah, so I like the trampoline, the jumping. That's really cool. That's a good idea too.
Thank you.
But
It's
that
my keep calm and jump on.
that one hurt on the inside of your palm.
Yes, it really did. And if it doesn't hurt, then it's not going to stay. Like, they have to go deep and scar it in order for it to stay, because the calluses and stuff on your hand. So
Yep.
yeah, it sucks. It's
Yeah.
not pleasant.
Yeah, my next one is going to be on my hand on the back. I'm getting 3 tattoos at once. I'm going to get forget me nots on my hand, like the blue
Oh
flowers.
yeah. Okay.
And then my wife has MS, so I'm going to get the MS ribbon on my middle finger. And my dad passed away from colon cancer, so I'm going to get that one on my this finger. So, fuck MS, fuck colon cancer, that kind of
Yeah, fuck
thing.
cancer.
Yep. So
Absolutely.
those are my next 3 I have lined up. And I told my mom for Christmas I just want money towards my next tattoo.
That's perfect. I think the older we get, we just give us money for bills and tattoos.
Yeah,
You know?
for bills and tattoos, the necessity. Especially now that I'm quitting cigarettes, like I need something to spend my money on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, so he called you out after 6 months of drinking.
Yeah, yeah. He called me out. We went to marriage counseling through our church. Oh, the pastor of our church offered to do marriage counseling for free, and we went in to see her, and he let, or I'm sorry, she let him speak first, and he spoke for about half an hour. Just, it was downright degrading. Like, I'm a terrible mother, I'm a drunk, and this and that. And I was a drunk, but I was not a terrible mother. I definitely made sure that my kids were taken care of. That's also, before I started neglecting my children later on because of my alcoholism, by going to the bars and stuff like that. But so the pastor looks at me and she says, "Well, obviously you're the problem." And I said, "You just you just ruined my marriage. Like, he'll never listen to me again." And that was kind of like the beginning of the end. I ended up we tried to work it out. Um, I just got to the point where I had had enough. He's a great father, a great provider, but when it came to being a partner in a
Or
relationship, he definitely wasn't that. It was like a big kid, in a sense. Like, he played video games a lot. We didn't really have any communication skills. Um,
you
Everything
had
was
said
my fault.
you were saying you weren't intimate either.
Yeah, no, it got to that point where there was nothing left. And so I packed up the kids in the middle of the night and I left him, and I sent him a text like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And that was probably the worst way I could have done it. I could have been a lot more mature about it. I felt at that point, which was probably wrong, that nothing good was ever going to come from our relationship again. Like it was broken and couldn't be repaired.
Did you take his kids with you or left his kids at home with him?
No, I left his two at home with him and I just took mine. I packed them up in the van with their clothes and left in the middle of the night.
Where'd you go?
I came to Boise and moved into an apartment.
Were you saving up money for that?
No, I took money out of our account to do that. Um, but he was a good provider, so I didn't really ever have to worry about money, and I used that as a way to move into this apartment. I had a roommate, but it wasn't something that I had to get on my own. It was already pre-set up because I had been planning on leaving, and I just finally got the guts to do it because it was all squared away. Like I had a place for my kids and I to go.
Yeah, I have a friend who is trying to look for a place to, her and her husband are at the same point where you are, except for he's not really working anymore. And she feels really stuck because, how expensive it is to move out on
Yeah.
your own these days. And she has 3 cats that she wants to bring with her. So not only is she wants to bring the 3 kids, she wants something for the 3 cats because they have 3 cats and a dog, but she's more of a cat person, and it's being next to impossible to find a house that allows pets, has 3 bedrooms, and
Yeah.
doesn't cost more than $1,500 a month.
Yeah.
So I feel bad. She's trying to leave. She wants to leave, and it's just she can't right now, and
Yeah.
that's
They're
what it
stuck.
comes down to. And your drink, did you have any kind of trauma with him during that time?
No, no, he was actually a really good man. Passive aggressive, but not abusive at all. The strong silent type, you know. Uh, he's a good guy. He still is. He's moved on and made this beautiful life for himself, which I'm really proud of. I'll always love him because of the fact that he gave me my youngest kid. It's just, some people aren't compatible. It was a quick marriage because of the fact that I got pregnant, and unfortunately it wasn't meant to be. It's not right. He's on to bigger and better things and doing well for himself. I'm really proud of him, and he's been such a good provider and father for our youngest child. Like I don't really ever talk to him anymore because our youngest is 18 now, and so I just talk to our youngest without the intervening of him. Like I used to have to go through him to be able to talk to Ezra, but now I don't have to anymore. So,
And, and your drinking progressed when you got your own place.
yeah, yeah. When I moved to Boise, I got a job working at Taco Bell, and which was across town, but there weren't any cameras in the Taco Bell, and I was a shift lead. I ended up closing, and so at night on break, I would go and grab a couple of Four Locos, and I would drink before I would go to work, and then I would drink at work, and then I would drop off my coworker at his house, have a drink there, and then go back home, and just it was a repetitive thing constantly, and it just when I would get home from work after having like the four locos throughout the day at work, I would get home and just drink myself into a blackout phase, and it was getting worse and worse. And like the the Hispanic people that worked on the main food line would always come in and be like, "Cerveza?" Like they would just tell me like, "You smell like beer," and I'm like, "No," you know, calling me out straight up. And I'm like, "No, no, it's from last night."
Any DUIs because of it?
Yes, I have 3 DUIs. I have all 3 of them were excessive. My first DUI was when I was 25. Um, and I lost my license for a year and was on misdemeanor probation. Um, I it was like a point 0.2 something, but since it was my first DUI, it was just a misdemeanor. My second DUI, I think like a little bit after 30. I'm trying to remember. I think it was 31 or 32 with my second DUI. And that one was excessive too. It was like a 0.29 something. And that one was an instant felony because the first one was also excessive. So the second one was a felony. And I was put on probation, felony probation at that time. They had taken my license again they took my license for 2 years at that point. Um, and about that time, I think it was like 2016, I started dating this guy, and I got into meth for about 4.5 months. And I mean, that shit stole my soul, dude. Like, I lost everything real quick. The kids, the house, I had 2 jobs, they were both gone. And I ended up getting a felony probation violation and going to jail. And then they sent me on a rider to prison, which is like 8 months of basically um, inpatient treatment. But it's at a prison facility. So I did that. That was 2018. I got out and was doing really good for a long time. I was sober for 4.5 years, started my own cleaning company. And oh God. And then I met another guy, and he didn't drink. He had been sober for 7 years off of opiates. And so just a really cool guy. I started dating him um, on, I think it was like my 36th birthday in 2019. And we got married in 2020. Um, and we got married in Las Vegas with a bunch of our friends and family on a rooftop there. It was a really cool wedding. Ended up doing like a West Coast tour for our honeymoon. And as soon as we got back into town, he worked for a big construction company that's all around like the Idaho area. He was a foreman. And he ended up getting called out to this job that's like 4.5 hours away from here, working on a power plant. It was like a 10-year job. And so I would only see him on weekends. And, we were just married and he's already gone. And so because I had my cleaning company, it was doing really good, successful. I'm sorry. I was able to go up and visit him sometimes during the week, because I had employees that would cover being back in town and all the jobs and stuff for me. And I would go and visit him from time to time during the weekdays. But he would come home during the weekends, and our relationship was just so strained because we never saw each other really. When we were back in town, like he would spend a lot of time with his son, his only son that he had through his ex-girlfriend. Um, and I spent a lot of time focusing on my business and my kids. And it was just it was funny because I would ask him to help out with bills and stuff. Like, I didn't need it, but our marriage was a partnership. And so I'm like, hey, can you help out with the power? Can you help out with like the rent and everything? And he would always tell me that he was broke. And I was like, as a construction foreman working out of town, you get per diem, you get overtime, you get paid all this extra stuff. And the only bill that I knew that he had was like his insurance and his truck payment. And it was an older truck. It was a 2002 Ford. So the payments were like $200 a month. So for somebody that's raking in like $65 an hour, saying that they don't have any money, I'm like, where does all your money go? Like, it's starting to become a point of contention because I'm having to pay for everything. Um, and he said that it's just all going to bills. And there would be times where he would tell me he's going to go up hunting, like bear hunting with his boss on the weekends and stuff. So he wasn't coming home. And I never like questioned it because I'm, tr- I'm, I trust people to a fault, like until you give me a reason not to. So if you tell me you're going to go do something, then I believe you until I catch you in a lie, kind of thing. And it turns out like I started having like this itching in my nether yaya. And it wouldn't go. I thought it was like a yeast infection, honestly. So I went and got some like over the counter monostat stuff. And it didn't go away. It was just progressively getting worse. And so, like, a month after dealing with this, hoping that it was just like an aggressive yeast infection, I went to the doctor. Um, and the doctor told me that I had trichomoniasis. And I was like, what the hell is that? And he goes, it's a sexually transmitted infection. And I I was like trying to justify how I could have gotten it other ways than from him, because I was in denial that
He would
he would
do
have
that.
done that. Yeah. And so I was like, can you get it from like using a tub? Because we had just gone on vacation and I sat in like the tub, and I was like, what about using a public toilet? What about using like a jacuzzi? And the doctor's like, you need to talk to your husband. I was like, oh God. So that was the point. I left the doctor's office and I went to the gas station right next to it, and I got like a buzz ball and I think a pack of cigarettes. And I hadn't drank or smoked, and I hadn't drank in 4.5 years, and I hadn't smoked since 2016. So it had been a while. And I called my mom crying, and I was just like, what do I do? She goes, don't do something stupid. She goes, just go put everything in your name and get yourself a car, because I was driving his truck because he would use the company vehicle to go to and from Idaho Falls. So I went and bought myself a car and took his name off of all the bills, like the Idaho Power, excuse me, and everything. And he wasn't supposed to come back until Friday, and I had bought my car on a Thursday. And as I'm transferring everything from his pickup truck into my new car, he pulls up. And he was like, I wanted to apologize to you, because we had had a fight before he left. And it wasn't about this, it was about something else. I don't even remember. But he hadn't talked to me the whole week. And so he came home early and wanted to apologize to me. And I was standing out in front of everybody in the neighborhood, and I just let him have it. And I was like, you fucking gave me an STD. Like, we're done. Like, I'm gonna go tell your parents, like, to get all your shit out of my house. And he was like, you didn't get that from me. Like, I don't have anything. And I was like, get your ass in the car then and let's go to the doctor's office. And so as we're in my new car and I'm driving, just crying, yelling at him, angry and everything. And he's sitting in the passenger seat stating, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. I swear, this, that. And I didn't believe him, you know? So we go to the doctor's office, he gets tested, and the motherfucker doesn't have anything. So he turns it back around on me, like, who were you with? What did you do? And I started thinking about it, and I was like, he knew he had something, and he had to have gone to the doctor while he was out of town. And that's why he hadn't come home like the weekend before. Oh, it was just, so he turned it back around on me, pointing the finger at me like I was the one that did something. Anyway,
Just
so
completely gaslit you.
oh yeah, like, you did this, it's not me, it's you. And so that was a huge point of contention, but I had already like gotten all his shit out of my house. I was done. Like, so he went and stayed at his parents for a while, and we tried marriage counseling through his work. He got some sort of deal for like 4 free sessions of therapy at a marriage counselor, and we did 3 of them. And it was going pretty good. Like, we were talking. It came to a point of where I was just like, I would like to work things out. I don't want to go through another divorce. And, so I had bought us a vacation in Paradise, Montana. Um, and we had gone up there for a weekend, and he had asked me at one point, like, if I had brought anything with me. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes like, I don't know, like drugs and cocaine. I was like, no, like, I don't know. And I'm like, are you using again? And he came clean that he had been using like meth and coke and stuff. And so the bottle, I'm sorry, the room came with like a free bottle of wine um out there at this hot springs resort that we were staying at. And so we drank the bottle of wine and decided to go to the bar that's right by the hot springs. And we had a couple drinks, and he was like, I'm allowing you to drink, but only if you don't say or do anything that's going to piss me off. And I should have taken that as a hint of like something weird. was like about to transpire, but I didn't because I was excited. I got permission to drink. You know, I'm an alcoholic. Woohoo! And I had brought this game that was like roll the dice to pick whatever you do to your partner up with us as like a playing game for he and I to be intimate. And one of the rolls of dice was like basically perform fellatio on your partner. And as I went to go do that, he's uncircumcised. And like we had been in the hot springs, we had been in the shower. Like I figured that it would have been clean, but it wasn't. And so I spoke up and I was like, your dick stinks. And he lost it. He fucking lost it on me, like yelling at me. He was like, well, your pussy stinks and you're a bitch and all this stuff. And he's like, he pulls out his phone and starts videotaping me. And I had put on a rope at this point because I was like super uncomfortable. And so he's videotaping me, telling me what a piece of shit that I am. And I'm always on my phone and all this stuff. So he takes my phone and my keys to the vehicle and chucks them out into the river. And I'm just standing there like, what the fuck? And so I run out to go see where they're at. And he was like, that's what you get, you stupid fucking bitch. And he slams the door and locks me out of the cabin in the middle of a blizzard, in the middle of Paradise, Montana, with no shoes on, just a robe. And so, oh, I'm sorry. Before that, like, so before all that happened, like, he had forced me down on the bed and like sodomized me and raped me. But I was able to get away, and that's when I got the robe and stuff on. And that's when he started videotaping me, telling me what a stupid fucking bitch I was and everything. But so when he locked me out of the cabin, you know, I'm bleeding and stuff, and the closest thing to us is like the lodge. It's a quarter mile away, and so I just start running to the lodge, and I don't know. I get across a couple of different like paths that is a driveway to this thing, and he comes out of the cabin and starts yelling at me like, "Come back here!" And no fucking way I was going back, dude. And so I'm running like through all the forest and everything like that to get to the lodge. And he gets in the truck and starts to follow me, but it's like this huge zigzag driveway to be able to get out of there. So I make it to the lodge before he can get to me. And I I go and like burst in through the front door. And I guess it was after closing time because the security guard that was standing like at the front counter was like, "You're not supposed to be in here." And I told him, I was like, "I need help. My husband just attacked me. Like he's chasing me. Please, you know, do something." So they shut me in the manager's office, and the security guard like citizen arrests my husband. They call the cops. They take me to the hospital to get checked out. They put him in jail. They had taken him to the hospital too to perform like get testing on him as well, like a swab kit or something. And they put him in jail. They give me an advocate for my case and stuff, and I refused to get like the testing and stuff done because they told me it was going to take like 8 to 16 hours to get everything done, and I needed to get back home. Like I needed to find a way to get a flight to get back home because I had to get back to work. Like at this point, I was in fight or flight mode. Like I'm going to be the only one taking care of my children now. I need to make sure that I'm going to be making the money and that like my kids are going to be okay. It was just like my process of thinking wasn't really logical, but a friend of mine ended up buying me like a ticket to come back to town. Um, but as I'm at the airport, I remember sitting there and looking out at the tarmac. And it was a sunset going down. It was really pretty. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up to like six cops on top of me with my face in the ground, yelling at them for me to, or yelling at me to quit resisting arrest. And after what I had just been through with my husband, and I wake up to men yelling at me to quit resisting, I'm freaking out. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how I got here. I don't know where I'm at. There's like blood on the ground in front of my face. And I start fighting back because I'm finally like coherent. I guess I had some sort of like mental breakdown and just completely lost it for about 2.5 hours. Um, they put me on a no fly list because they thought I was not mentally stable to go fly. And so the security guards at the airport took me over to um, a hotel that was close to the airport. They drove me over there, and I guess um, I had ran into the counter and asked the girls behind the counter to help me because somebody was after me, and they were like, "Do you need us to call the police?" And I was like, and I was getting irritated because they didn't know what I wanted from them, but I honestly didn't know either. I was in like some sort of weird mental disconnect.
Just
So
completely blacked out.
yeah, it was really strange. I went into like a cafe that they have there for like the sodas and snacks and stuff, and I started pounding on the glass. And then I ripped open the door and started pulling out all the sodas, and I went back to the counter yelling at the girls, and then I I ran out and they arrested me. And I guess while I'm sitting there on the ground against one of the police vehicles, one of them asked me a question, like, and I'm watching all this through like the body cam footage. I don't remember any of it. One of them asked me a question, and I called him a few names, like, "You stupid fucking pig, you raped me in my ass," and like I'm talking to somebody I don't even know like this, and like I asked my lawyer who's showing me all this footage to just turn it off at that point. Like I didn't want to see anymore. Like it was really hard to like watch like how sad and scared I was through this video and like hear it in my voice and not remember any of it. And like I'm terrifying these girls at the this hotel counter, like yelling at them because they're not helping me. I don't even know what's going on in my life at that point. Like I'm just running around terrorizing people and asking for help for something. Anyway, they ended up booking me into the Missoula County Jail, and they kept me there overnight and ROR'd me the next morning. And I was able, because there was a snowstorm that night, they held my flight. So I was able to go back and get a flight home. But because of like the cut on my chin, which is where all that blood came from me falling down while I was handcuffed, the cops didn't stop me from face planting. And so I had this huge gash on my chin, which in turn put blood all over my shirt. And this poor woman sitting next to me on the flight, I can only like imagine what's going through her head because I'm sitting there just, I mean, my yellow long sleeve shirt and my pants are just covered in blood. And I'm sitting there talking to her, and she's being very kind and polite and stuff, but I can't even imagine like what you would do at that point if you sit next to somebody on a plane that's covered in blood. Like, so I got back into town, and oh boy, I ended up getting security cam footage. The detective that was handling my case over there in Montana for my husband told me that they were supposed to let me know when he was released from jail. They didn't. And he tried to come in and break into my house. I had it on video camera, and so I filed a restraining order against him because he was trying to break into my property while I was at work and my kids were in school. It was just a really unstable situation. Like, and he said that he just wanted his like PlayStation and his video games. When we went to court about it 2 weeks after I filed the restraining order, he was like, "I just wanted my stuff." But I don't know. It was very strange. Like you could see the fingerprints on the window from him trying to like push it open and stuff.
Yeah,
So we're now officially divorced. But after all of that transpired, I had started drinking pretty heavily at that time, and I cut off all my hair like Hawkeye from the Avengers because I wanted to. I started learning archery and stuff. I was like, why does just like create this whole new person? Like nobody's gonna want me if I don't have any hair
that's right. I
and
named
all.
your episode your other. It didn't come out yet as of this point, but I named your episode the one where Vivian goes full Britney Spears.
It's true. Like my hair was all
You just
gone.
reminded me when you said that. I'm like, I know which one she did now.
It's true. It was all gone. It was
How
hideous.
long ago was this?
That was in 2021 was when I Yeah, 2021 is when I shaved it all off and started learning archery and stuff. Wanted to be like Hawkeye from the Avengers, and then like I started going to the bar a lot. I started going to the bar a lot. I I basically had like shut down my business at that point because another point of contention with my husband was when I found out what he was actually doing with his money. Um, he I found out because he had taken 115 grand out of my savings account for my business and he gambled it all away. And so that's how I figured out that he had a gambling problem. So on top of like the cheating and the STDs, like all my money is gone. So I shut my business down. I don't have any more employees. Like, and my life's just going down the toilet. Like, so might as well just, ride it down. Um, so I started going to the bar all the time. I quit working. Like, my poor kids were just watching me burn. And my youngest was the one that would speak up most of the time and be like, "You're drinking again? Like, really? Like, do you ever not drink?" Honestly, because like I'd always have those big wine boxes like on my nightstand. Like, so I would drink that in the morning before I would go to the bar. And then I'd go to the bar and get nice and tight. And then I'd stop at the gas station and get Monaco's and like, oh God, my favorite one towards the end there was White Russians because they're 14% alcohol and they taste so good. And so I was buying, like, the gas station people knew me and they would order me a 4 pack every day. And I would go in and get a 4 pack of the White Russians and a big box of wine. Like, I was just blowing through money that I just didn't, that I still had from what was left over from my business that he hadn't gotten to. And, God, I was just blowing through it all, just drinking everything away. It was bad. I started getting super puffy because all I was doing was drinking. And I don't know why that happens. You look like you're about 30 pounds heavier than you are with
Yeah,
alcohol.
it's really, it makes you bloat really
Yeah,
bad.
I was super bloated. And then I started dating this guy that I met in the bar that was from the South. I think he was from Kentucky. Um, that was only like a month and a half long. I had decided to move back to Oklahoma. I was going to go live with my cousin until I got on my feet there. My youngest was going to come with me. My oldest was going to stay here. And I had already packed up my house, and I was 3 days away from leaving. And I was headed out to a different town to go have my best friend remove my fake eyelashes that I used to wear all the time. And I had my boyfriend's kids in the car with me, and I got pulled over because there was an accident. I was coming into a lane to try and get off of the freeway, and as I was merging into the lane, there was a gentleman that didn't want to let me over, so he rammed the back of my car. And where we were at on the freeway and the off ramp, like there's no place to pull over because of an accident.
Yeah,
So I went around the off ramp and pulled over in the Winco parking lot. And by the time we both got to Winco, like there were 4 cop cars that come swarming up, and both the little boys that were in the car with me, they unbuckled and they were like, "Cop cars, cool," the lights and everything. And so I got that was my third DUI. And when I blew a .47 or a .497 and a .493. And I asked the police officer when the last time that his thing had been calibrated because that was extreme, you know. Like I don't think that that's really because that means my blood was like 5% alcohol,
yeah,
and I passed every field sobriety test that they had except for the breathalyzer. But because the boys had unbuckled, like they got me for them not being in car seats and not being belted in. Um, I also got two child endangerments. I got another excessive DUI, and they got me with leaving the scene of an accident because I didn't pull over right there on the side of the freeway. Like we both went to Winco, and the guy said that I was fleeing the scene, and I was like, there was nowhere to pull off. But okay, so I went to jail that day, and that everything that I had packed up, I ended up losing. Like my two best friends went over to my place and gathered up things that they thought that I would want to save. But I lost both my kids. I lost all three of my dogs. I lost my home. I lost everything that I've had since I was a child. Like everything was gone, and that's all my doing because of my addiction. I chose, and like the more that I drink, the more I like to drive, the more I like to go out and go off roading and going to the mountains and everything. It's just, um, I make really poor choices the more I drink. So I ended up doing 7.5 months in jail, and then they sent me to prison to do a writer again. So I was locked up for 15 months. I want to say 15, 16 months altogether. I got arrested June 9th, 2022, which is my sobriety date. And I was released from prison August 25th of 2023. So,
So you've been
but
out for a little over a year then.
yeah, yeah, I've been out a little over a year, and all these wonderful things are transpiring in my life. And it's funny, addiction is a disease of amnesia. You truly forget how bad things get once you start. You just spiral downhill, you
Yep.
know. And I'm starting to get my life back together. I have both my kids back in my life. I have one of my dogs back. My youngest has one of the dogs. My mother trusts me to be around her. She calls me and tells me she's proud of me. Um, I'm just incredibly grateful for everything that I have now. My probation officer just showed up again at my house for the second time since I've been here. Um, and he came with an old CO that the first time I was in prison. He was now a probation officer, and they both came in. And because I'm so OCD, I give them little like booties to put on their shoes to walk in my house. And my probation officer is like, she told me this was going to happen. I was like, I'm really grateful that you guys are putting them on. Thank you. And they just came in, just did a quick check, and it feels really good to not be scared of cops anymore. And I feel like the reason that you're scared of cops is because you're doing some shady shit. And I was headed down to the laundry room when they showed up, and they were like, "Hey, where are you going?" I said, switching over laundry right now." And they were like, "Do you have a minute? Can we come in?" I was like, "Yeah, come on up," And it's good to not be like, "Fuck, I have something out that, or I have beer in the fridge or something in my trash can."
We
You
had
know?
that recently in our apartment. I don't know if I told you before. I quit smoking weed back in April, and my wife quit smoking weed October 1st. On my 6 month anniversary, my wife quit smoking weed. So now we're in a smoke free apartment.
Woo!
And before, in the last 5 years of being together, in this apartment and the previous apartment, if we had to have maintenance come to our apartment, we would have to make sure the bongs and the bowls and it doesn't smell like smoke and all that kind of shit. And a couple of weeks ago, the light went out in our living room, and it's in this fixture that we couldn't get open, so we had to call maintenance. But we didn't have to worry about hiding shit. We didn't care when they were going to show
Yeah.
up. You know what I mean? And it was weird because it was the first time where we were like, oh no, just come whenever, we'll be here. And, not give them certain times that we're going to be home. This way they come and we're going to be prepared for them.
Yeah.
So it felt really good. I know exactly that feeling of, nope, come on over whenever you want. We'll be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Get on in here. Just put booties on your shoes.
yeah. Well, I'm glad to see you're doing so well now, Vivian. It's never easy to, relive some of that shit.
Yeah.
And,
Thank you.
you know, breaking your ass off. That's what he used to say.
Tearing your ass off was what he would
Tearing
say.
your ass off.
Yep. Yep. That was our form of spanking. That was normal for us.
And this
Getting,
episode is Vivian gets her ass torn off.
yeah. Yeah.
It's
That's exactly
it's
what it is. But
right.
I'm
Yeah.
volunteering out at the prison now, like the where I used to be. I get to go out and bring church out on Tuesday and freedom from the inside on Wednesday and Friday nights AA. and chairing Monday meetings at my home group. Like I'm super involved, and I've got girls out at the prison asking if I could sponsor them when they get out. It's a great feeling to not only give back to where I used to be, but show them that like you can succeed. Like you don't have to have prison be the definition of who you are. It's
Yeah.
just it's just a chapter of your life, and you learn from it and you move on, and you build. That's the foundation for your new home.
Yep. Yep. That's awesome that you're giving back. And AA is such an amazing thing to have too, where you can meet, people think I recommend AA or NA because, God. And it's like, no, I recommend it because you can meet other people that are
Yes,
sober or clean or sober, whatever you want to call it. And it's a good way to, because like I always say, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you're spending a lot of time with people that are sober, the chances of you making it sober are higher.
I
Now,
like
if,
that.
if
Yeah.
you're if you're hanging around with people that are still getting high, your chances of getting high are much greater.
Yeah, yeah. Like you're setting yourself up for failure in
Yeah,
that situation. 100%.
exactly.
Like nobody's strong enough to do that. I used to have, when I was bartending, I used to have a couple of people that would come in that were sober and just drink sodas and intermingle with the old bar crew, and I commended them. Like, there's no way for me as an alcoholic, I mean, even with 2.5 years right now, that I'd be able to go into a bar and not eventually get to the point where I would want to have a drink. So
Yeah,
I'm just not as strong as some people. I commend them for being able to do that. But you're right, having that friend group and that kind of support and stuff definitely will make or break you.
yep, it will. Awesome. Awesome job, Vivian. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, JD. It was good seeing you. I hope you
You
guys have a
too.
good weekend
Yeah, have a
and
great day.
happy anniversary.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.